Away, Keith. Welcome to Thrive in Sales, a sales training and thriving podcast. Hi, I'm Neeraj. I'm an interactive sales trainer and one-to-one coach. I get results for small businesses and deliver training to large corporates like Barclays, NatWest, Sainsbury's, and Google. I'm the author of 2 Amazon best-selling books.
And I'm Keith. I've sold technology into investment banks throughout my sales career, and I sales led one of the largest ever software outsourcing deals, well over $1 billion. I'm a sales coach and visiting lecturer in professional selling at Aston Business School.
Every week we'll share proven strategies to help you generate more sales. Plus we'll bring well-being experts onto the show to give you the knowledge, strategies, and takeaways you need to thrive in sales. And this week's topic is going to be talking about the effects of poor mental health in sales. And we're going to be talking about how to get yourself out of a rut, because during the summer, it's always much more tougher to sell than the rest of the year. And plus August has seen a dip. And our special guest is Jon Manning. Now, Jon has 20 years of experience within mental health, managing his own condition, provides him with the insight into the human behind mental health. And with his professional commercial background, he helps organizations look after their people whilst ensuring that projects are commercially viable. He's got a radio show discussing a variety of mental health topics and has been asked to deliver a variety of talks, including Cambridge Union. Jon, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you on here on a personal level, Jon, because you are based nearby Milton Keynes, and so many people are always talking about you in my network. You got to get Jon the show. You got to get Jon the show. So it's great we could finally get our diaries arranged and have you on. So thank you for that. We were discussing about how we can give as much advice to our listeners as possible, and you said, how can poor mental health have a benefit in sales? No one said that before. So can you explain a bit more what you mean by that, please?
Yeah, of course. And I think that it comes back to, probably all know the saying, whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger, right? And the mental health reasoning behind that, or the mental health methodology behind that, is that through our different life experiences, we find different ways in which we can cope with that. So essentially, the more that we've been through, the more issues we might have experienced, the more coping strategies that we'll have in order to deal with more. And mental health isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's something that we all sit on. It's like this spectrum. And if we are in a position where we are dealing with something more positively, then our mental health will grow. If it's something that we've got negative coping strategies towards, then it will begin to diminish. So if people have been through an awful lot, then they can certainly use those skills that they've learned in their own personal experiences to benefit their sales, whether it's their process, their approach to it, the way that they perform in general.
Okay, so if you imagine during lockdown, which everybody thought would last a few months, I think we're approaching month 5 now, where things are still really tough. And because it's summer, we have seen a bit of a dip and things are getting tougher again. So how can people use the tough experiences they're going through right now to help them get out of a slight concern and a rut many of us are going through, which is like, how are we supposed to generate more sales now? It's really tough out there. It's really hot outside. People are on holiday, and a lot of people are very stressed at the moment, thinking, how do we pay the mortgage end of the month and how do we pay the bills? What advice do you have for them on that, please, Jon?
Yeah, we're all in that similar position, and I think what sets us apart is the way that we approach these situations. So we kind of describe at Arthur Ellis, we describe mental health as a bit like calories and a bit like nutrition. So you can have you can eat as much as you want. You can have all of the the good times that you want, as long as you're doing the exercise. You're burning the negative off. So it's very, very similar in relation to our behaviors and how we act day to day. So if we have a lot of positive behaviors within our lives, then we are in a really, really good position to have good mental health. If we combine those with negative behaviors, like going out for a drink, for example, or maybe not necessarily just one drink, but as we all tend to do, one turns to 2, 3, 4, whatever. So our alcohol sales have gone through the roof throughout lockdown. And that tells us that obviously a lot of people are finding a particular coping strategy in order to deal with the situation. If you're able to shift those into more positive behaviors, your calorie expenditure goes up, and you have a much healthier platform to be able to actually do the work. It's not necessarily about just saying, get out there and do it and go out and go get make some money, but it's just about making sure that we give ourselves the best opportunity and the best chance to do that. So when we do have a particular downturn in sales or downturn in opportunity, sometimes we can just think we need to work harder at it. But if you can shift it to have a look at how are you behaving in order to encourage maybe this lull, which is something that we all do, maybe subconsciously. So having a look at how we're behaving, change that to more positive ones to give us a better platform to work from.
That's fantastic. Keith, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm really interested on that very last point you were picking up. What are our behaviors, behaviors and outputs? And I wrote down unconscious incompetence, which goes back to the old Neil Rackham, I think Rackham, principles that I learned about so many years ago. And I wonder how many of us are kind of sleepwalking into that poor behavior because of these difficult, extraordinary, we run out of superlatives very quickly times. And so I think that the ability to perhaps just pause and reflect on and analyze what's not going quite so well in our sales efforts, if you like, just understand why that might be. And I think that gives us a lot of indicators of how we change our behaviors, and that will in turn to lead to a changed or hopefully improved outputs as well. So yeah, great point.
Absolutely, Keith. It's not in psychology. There's two forms of behaviors. There's loads more than that. I'm just in a nutshell. But if you look at the things that we do positively for our well-being, so you talk about exercise, getting a good night's sleep, all of these standard things that we know about, they're called protective factors. So I did a radio show on this. It's really, really interesting that they're the things that add to our mental health. They're things that release endorphins, things that give us a positive day. They can become really, really granular, and you probably know of some other things that people can use, like journaling, positive reflection, positive self-talk. There's loads. However, there are also other behaviors called maintenance factors, which is a bit misleading. That refers to behaviors that we do that maintain a negative state. So if we have had a rough day, as an example, I will never come home after a rough day and eat a salad. I will always go and binge donuts or pizza.
I tell you, I don't even come home after a good day and eat a salad.
Exactly, but a perfect example of a maintenance factor is that, if you then you're going to wake up in the morning, probably feel a little bit rough, might not have a great stomach depending on where you ordered your food from, and then you're going to have that maintained low mood, similar to alcohol. It's a depressive. So if we are stuck in a lull and we are beginning to blame things like clients or summer or just a downturn in the economy or whatever we want to choose, firstly, have a look at what we are doing ourselves. And typically we're stuck in more maintenance factor behaviors than protective factor behaviors. That makes sense.
So just to build on that, are you saying that okay, so one of my sort of guilty pleasures is Ben and Jerry's. So
yes.
I use, and I'm not alone in that because I've seen their sales numbers, and I'm not eating all of it. But Ben and Jerry's, I often use as a reward for something that, I've had a really good day. I'm going to build on that emotional sort of goodness, if you like. But also as a bit of a crutch for it's been a crappy day, I'm going to make myself feel good by doing this thing. And obviously as a certain output, which is I need to do something about that. Is that what you're talking about, that kind of behavior, or have I missed it?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And we need to begin looking at it in a different way, because our behaviors I would like us to begin looking at it like calories, or even like a bank account, you know, income and expenditure. And if we begin rewarding ourselves for good things with something like Ben and Jerry's, like you say, Keith, which is, you know, something that everybody does, it's normal. If we're rewarding ourselves with Ben and Jerry's, but then we are also consoling ourselves with Ben and Jerry's as well, our expenditure of these maintenance factor behaviors goes way above what we're bringing in terms of protective factors. So we begin, the scales tip in more than one respect, from all of those positive things that we do to begin increasing our well-being, to those things that are taking away from it. And that begins to maintain that lull. That's what it does. So if we can identify those, if we can identify what are these things that we do to protect our well-being, that boost us, that keep us out of those lulls, or change our days round, or our weeks round, or months round, we need to begin to emphasize those in the bad times, rather than succumbing to those maintenance factors behaviors, like going on a binge, or even just not get out of bed. You know, it can be really, really small things that start to trigger for people, you know, not showering or taking care of yourself, and different things like that. It can be really, really minute, but we need to start looking at that before we look at anything else.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points earlier about journaling and positive self-talk, because these are things that when I was coaching yesterday lunchtime to young people, and none of them had journals, none of them had a vision board. And when I asked about positive self-talk, they were like, oh, "That's so American." That was a response. That's so American. But it really does make a massive difference, and I think people underestimate a lot how important mindset is in sales, not just in everyday life, but when you make a sales call first thing in the morning, you know, you're going to be interrupting somebody's day. And you can't just pick up the phone and do it. Even someone with myself, 25 years experience, I don't just do it. I look at my vision board, which is right in front of me right now. I look at the pictures of my family, my daughter, my charity work. I look at all the tickets from concerts I used to go to, because in the old days, you used to get ticket stubs. So you have AC/DC, Europe, Bon Jovi. These are things that just fill my brain with such positivity that I just pick up the phone automatically. You know, then of course, it's just being a grown-up, you have things like a mortgage anyway, so that keeps you pretty well driven. If we don't pick up the phone and call people, the bills don't get paid. But I think people need to, I think, have a bit more consideration of the fact that journaling is an okay thing to do. It's not a female thing to do. Men should be journaling, because it makes such a big difference. And when you get the mindset right and the positivity right, it makes sales, and it also just makes your day so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And this sort of comes back to the subject of this show. It's about if you are leading a team as well. If you're you think about the typical sales environment, and if you think about maintenance and protective factors, majority of sales environments promote maintenance factors over these protective factors. So if sales leaders are able to begin looking at their teams in ways of you know, what is going to boost their well-being, rather than what's going to be that rewarding or consoling behaviors, then they'll have a much not necessarily much more successful sales team, but the success will be a lot more long term as well.
I've never ever had a sales director say to me, "How can I boost my team's well-being?"
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point you brought up
Yeah.
there. I just thought it was important to mention that, because they always say, how do we make more money? How do we generate more sales? But no sales director or even business owner has ever said, how do I boost my team's well-being? So if you're listening, please think about that. Sorry, Keith, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I think you're right on the money there. I do think some of that is, you know, sales can be quite a machoistic sort of pursuit sometimes. I'm really really pleased that more women are coming into the profession. And please, if you're a female and you're thinking about coming into the sales profession, you'd be most welcome to join. But actually, I think the balance, certainly when I've seen female leaders, there is more emphasis put on well-being, what I would almost call pastoral care, which is absent when you've got lots of male and alpha type leadership, which isn't there. It's a very, and I hesitate to use the word American, but it's a very raw, everything you've seen in The Wolf of Wall Street, basically. Those kind of behaviors, they're great for quick fixes and get that, let's get the best sales team performance by Friday. But if you want the best sales team performance year on year, sustainable, predictable, all of those things, then everything that Jon has been talking about here, and making sure you've got a resilient sales team that's in a really good mental place most of the time, that's really sustainable, and shareholders will love you for it because the numbers are much more predictable. So that's great. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
They absolutely are. And these people are representing your business, aren't they? They're the ones who are on the ground representing the face of your company. So if they're in a really, really good position mentally, they're going to be able to not necessarily just come across in a really positive way, but also if there are, mental health dictates the way that we deal with situations. So if something comes up that is unpredictable, something that comes up that is maybe a bit surprising or unexpected, which is pretty much salespeople's lives, then they're going to be able to deal and cope with that situation in a much more positive and effective way. And that's through the effective use of these things that we call protective factors. So if you can manage your team in that particular way, and this is what if we're training with a business or working strategically with them, this is how we try to shape the way that they work. And it's across all teams. It works in any team, but specifically for sales, it's very, very important. But because of the stereotypes of sales and the way that the industry or the roles and jobs have been kind of structured in the past, it's quite a difficult change to make because of that attitude, I think, within the culture of it.
Now, one final question I have. I know that from experience, everybody knows they need to change something, but change is so difficult to do. It's incredibly difficult, and sometimes it takes several attempts. What can people do, Jon, to get change going? What can sales directors do to think, I need to boost my team's well-being instead of trying to make them close another deal? What can we do to try and encourage that, do you think?
Look at the long-term impacts of what you're doing right now. Mental health is interesting because sometimes it's referred to as being insane if you've got bad mental health. But I think I can't remember who it was Einstein or something, said insanity is doing the same thing that doesn't work over and over again. So if you are looking at a particular lull, identifying those behaviors that might be either keeping you in it or started it in the first place, if you're going to create an environment or keep an environment, whether that's an individual environment or a team environment that is not going to change as a result of that, in 3-4 months time, look at what the impacts will be. Try and predict it, try and map that out. And you can do, that's why I kind of use the calorie analogy, because if you do have Ben and Jerry's every single night, whether it's reward or whether it's condolence, that is going to have a large impact on you over the next 3-4 months. So looking at the long-term impacts of the way that things are going or the way that you're behaving can really motivate you to make a change. One particular example of that is there's a gentleman, a local businessman, I won't mention his name, but he was given 6 months to live because of his alcohol habit. He was hospitalized, everything. It was only until about month 5.5 that he actually stopped drinking. So he actually pushed it right up to the limit. And that is, that's just such a massive embedded in this maintenance factor. And there's always a reason why you're engaging in that behavior. You're trying to forget about something else, or you're trying to avoid something else. So if you can identify what is spurring that maintenance factor on, or that negative behavior, then you can address it. But a lot of us, I think we mentioned it earlier, I think you mentioned it, Keith, about just going at it blind. So if we can identify that, and that's what sales leaders need to do for their sales teams as well.
That's brilliant. Well, look, such an important part of sales training that we deliver. It's not just what you're learning, it's what you take action on. And you've given us so many great action points here today, Jon, in our discussion. I've never had anybody sort of compare mental health to nutrition the way you did, which I think is fantastic. You can have it as long as you burn it off. That is brilliant. About thinking positively, I am a big, big believer in that. What can we do to boost our team well-being? Thinking of long-term impact, and especially pause and reflect. I think that's so important. Pause and reflect doesn't mean stop, by the way, because a lot of people are stopping at the moment and they shouldn't be, but it's okay to pause and reflect, see what's going well, understand why. That's absolutely vital. Keith, what would you like to add to that, please?
Yeah, I love that statement you made towards the end, Jon, which is look at the long-term impacts of what you're doing right here, right now. But wow, that's a very sobering, in every sense of the word, line to be on the receiving end, and I should be certainly reflecting on that.
Yeah, and sales and well-being are typically seen very short term. You know, we're after short-term gratification all the time. But from my particular perspective, you know, having lifelong conditions and disabilities that I manage, think long term.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So, Jon, what's the best way? Because I'm sure there's people listening to this going, this is fantastic. How do we find out more? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if people want to get in touch with me personally, then on LinkedIn is probably the best. So just search for Jon Manning. And then if people want to find out more about what Arthur Ellis do, in the work that we do with businesses and the work we do with communities across the country, then please visit Arthur Ellis, MHS for mental health support.com.
Wonderful. And for those of us listening through audio, Jon Manning is Jon, not John. Manning, Manning, and Arthur Ellis, Arthur Arthur, and Ellis Ellih. M for mother, H for Henry, S for sugar. Jon, thank you so much for coming on our show and sharing your advice with us. If you have any questions, any points you want to raise in future shows, or if you want to hire Keith and Neeraj for sales training, then please email us hello@thriveinsales.com. We'd love to hear from you. Also, remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
This episode is brought to you by Monkey Pants Productions. We're a podcast production company helping businesses to get into the world of podcasting through bespoke workshops and professional standard recordings. For more information, you can email pete@monkeypantsproductions.co.uk.
Keith and I are both massive fans of the TV show Frasier. So until next week, wishing you good sales, mental health. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Jon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jon.